what if blockchain adoption wasn't crypto adoption? Like what does that mean? What does it look like? And what are some of the opportunities that we see there? So obviously, crypto or blockchains today, they tend to be crypto first. They're coming up with these tokens, maybe building these complex tokenomics, generating APRs or whatever, staking. And that's how these companies are largely extracting value. They're largely extracting income off of their tokens, whether they're selling them to their users, which you could consider as investors of a platform, or to VCs or something like that. But at the end of the day, they're kind of stuck in this situation where, to encourage people to hold their token, the most valuable utility that they can offer is an APR, which is typically done in the form of staking. And we're going to see how that's problematic here in a second. I'm not aware of any network first opportunities, or I should say L1s out there. I think there's been some concepts, but nothing that exists. So not even Bitcoin falls into a network first, because obviously you mine Bitcoin, you paid Bitcoin to operate it. But the kind of concept here is, what if we built a network that was kind of tokenless? It didn't extract its value off of the token. Instead, it extracted value for the underlying organization from the adoption of the network itself. So instead of there being this, kind of broken law of supply and demand, you've actually got, network demand is directly equating to revenue for the organization and the economy. So I'm not going to go through everything in detail, but essentially the problem here is gas tokens. The key to a successful business is unpredictable costs at no one ever, because that's kind of the situation that we're in. Is blockchains, their gas tokens behave like commodities, which puts them in a situation where a business must incorporate this volatile commodity to utilize a blockchain. That means they have to be kind of like investors, right? They need to kind of suffer from this unpredictable cost, which makes it really difficult for them to operate. And we're seeing this issue now. We're seeing Lido, who is operating staked ETH on Ethereum, causing some major issues from my perspective. The APR on ETH right now is about 4%. On Lido, you're getting about 3.9%, if I recall correctly, and it's competing with DeFi. It's better than that's almost as good as Compound. It's better than tons of pools on Uniswap and Curve, these are giants. In Ethereum, these are giants. These are like the majority of DeFi at one point. Now we're seeing that DeFi is kind of being eaten by staking via these staked ETH. And what that does is it means that Lido is becoming kind of a centralizing actor in Ethereum as well, where now I think something like a third of ETH staked is from Lido, which means that when proof of stake opens, a huge number of the staked ETH is going to be under Lido. And that's problematic from my perspective, because it makes it very challenging for Uniswap and these businesses to operate, because they're in direct competition with the fundamental operation of the blockchain itself. So not only are expenses super high, but now they can't give out the best rate because they're competing with the network itself. And then frankly, the network should never compete with its businesses that operate. It's not fair to a business, and it doesn't incentivize growth. It just incentivizes people to hold ETH, which I don't think helps the overall economy. So from our perspective, this is kind of where the future is that the adoption of token-based economics is preventing blockchain technology itself from just becoming what the internet is today. And I'm going to skim through this because we're going on a little bit, but just to kind of hit through it, we did look at 16 different blockchains, everything from ETH, Bitcoin, Solana, everywhere, 16 different blockchains to kind of look at what's happening. They're all just those 16. They generate about $1.4 billion in fees annually. These are just transaction fees. To operate those networks, they're subsidizing about $12.3 billion. What that means is that they're spending that out to stakers, validators, and things like that just to operate their network. If they took that away, that would be a reduction in the APRs, and it may cause people to not hold things like Ethereum if there was no APR, for example. So it's a real problem, and from my perspective, that's a real expense. They're spending 12 billion to generate that 1.4 billion in revenue, which most of them just burn. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Blockchains are pretty cheap to run, to be perfectly honest. The average blockchain costs about 300K per year to operate. That's hardware network costs. So if you were to run these networks completely free in a centralized way, you'd be at 300K a year to run a world-class blockchain, which makes sense, because you think about it. You're not sending 4K videos on a blockchain. You're sending basically text messages. Hashes of small amounts of data are going back and forth in a decentralized way. So it makes sense that the costs are low. So they're spending about $8.50 to generate $1. If you took away some of those costs, you could really flip this thing around. You can make it such that you could spend half a cent per dollar you generate if you were to take away some of those subsidies in your possible generation costs. So we're going to talk about that as well. Just looking at what some of these blockchains spend, things like Ethereum obviously is ridiculous, $9 billion a year to subsidize validators today. It's going to improve a lot with ETH 2.0. It's going to be just a mere 1.5 billion. I believe Netflix is 300 million a year to operate. So it's only, what is that? 5 times the amount. So it's something. That's something to think about. And there's a nice big range here where you can take a look through and kind of play with. So I'll leave that for when this goes public. Going into this a little bit more, we've got some stuff here on the solution, just the kind of stuff that we're talking about. This is all stuff that you've heard, and kind of the sector that we're thinking about. We're thinking about crypto as like a territory, right? And it's this massive landscape. We have, Bitcoin is extremely generally predictable cost, just like Solana. Actually, Solana is basically fixed. You have things like, ETH is maybe a little more volatile, very expensive. Solana is cheap and predictable, which is great. So there's kind of like a new space that we're pushing into. And the concept is kind of this. If you think about what a blockchain, if you take away tokenomics, what is a blockchain selling? And it's selling block space, it's selling a shipping container. And what's happening is it's shipping those containers on the open ocean, and it's saying, hey, I'm selling this much space to the person that bids the most. It's super high security, it's decentralized, and and it's small. We can't really fit a ton of information there, and it's going to be and we can do so privately. As the most similar industry that I can think of is actually cloud. Is actually a cloud where they're basically selling huge amounts of information. It's not private. It's not necessarily as decentralized, and it's not. Of course, it's not going to be as secure as a cryptographically secure blockchain. So that's really where we're thinking that this fits, is more in the direction of this kind of like stable chain territory, we're starting to call it, where things can become extremely cheap and very much like known costs to operate. Like we know what it costs to send a transaction and operate that blockchain. So for us, we consider this, kind of a new space in terms of crypto. And from here, things can just get cheaper and more known. So that's the future that we see. There's some crazy stuff here, looking at dollar amounts and whatnot and how these companies operate. I'll kind of leave that all here for fun for you guys. A little bit just about our history. Everyone watching this knows all of that, who we are, and just kind of wrapping that up. This is all tied to unbelievable amounts of data with kind of detailed notes on everything we've taken. So this is a pretty all-encompassing sheet, tons of references, tons of information to look into. And with any hope, we'll be able to make this public here in the near future.